The research station floating in the void between star systems had been humanity's home for 3 generations. Commander Sarah Chen watched through the observation deck as her 6-year-old daughter Emma pressed her face against the reinforced glass, her breath fogging the surface as she traced patterns with her small fingers. "Mama, when are we getting the puppy?" Emma asked for the 100th time that day. Her voice carried the persistent hope that only children possessed, the kind that could wear down the strongest military resolve. Sarah smiled despite the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. The station housed over 10,000 souls, all depending on her decisions. But when Emma looked at her with those bright brown eyes filled with innocent expectation, the universe seemed to shrink to just the 2 of them. "Soon, sweetheart. The transport ship arrives tomorrow." Sarah knelt beside her daughter, both of them gazing out at the stars. "Remember what we talked about? The puppy might be a little different from the ones in your storybooks." Emma nodded eagerly. "Because he's been in space for a long time, right? And space changes things?" "Something like that." Sarah's hand found Emma's smaller one. The child had no idea that their new pet wasn't exactly what it seemed. The Galactic Council had been very specific about the arrangement. As part of the peace treaty with the Zephyrian Empire, each human settlement would receive what they called a companion unit, beings designed to observe and report on human behavior while appearing as harmless domestic animals. The irony wasn't lost on Sarah. Humanity had only recently been accepted into the galactic community, and already they were being watched. The other species found humans unpredictable, emotional, and potentially dangerous. Their capacity for both creation and destruction had made the galaxy nervous. The companion units were meant to be living surveillance, gathering data on human social patterns and psychological responses. What the Zephyrians hadn't counted on was human attachment to animals. They had studied human culture for decades, analyzing their art, literature, and historical records. They understood that humans kept creatures called pets for companionship, but they couldn't comprehend the depth of the emotional bond. To them, it was simply another form of resource management. Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief xenobiologist, had tried to explain it to Sarah during their classified briefing. The Zephyrians were a highly logical species, evolved from pack hunters who valued efficiency above all else. They formed temporary alliances based on mutual benefit. But the concept of love, especially love for another species, was foreign to them. "The companion unit will be programmed to mimic a Labrador retriever," Webb had explained. His weathered face creased with concern. "Their technology is remarkable. Biomechanical synthesis at the cellular level. To all appearances, it will be a normal dog. It will even have basic canine instincts and responses, but underneath it's a sophisticated monitoring device." Sarah had accepted the arrangement because she had no choice. The peace treaty was too important to risk over one family's desires. But she had also seen an opportunity. If the Zephyrians wanted to understand humans, perhaps it was time they learned what human love really meant. The next day, the transport ship docked with a mechanical precision that spoke of Zephyrian technology. Sarah held Emma's hand as they waited in the cargo bay, surrounded by other families who had requested companion units. The air hummed with excitement and nervous energy. When the transport doors opened, Sarah's breath caught. The creatures that emerged looked exactly like the dogs they were supposed to be. Golden retrievers, beagles, border collies, and Labradors moved with natural grace, their synthetic biology indistinguishable from the real thing. Even Sarah, who knew the truth, found herself amazed at the perfection of the deception. A medium-sized yellow Labrador approached them, its tail wagging with what appeared to be genuine enthusiasm. Emma squealed with delight and dropped to her knees, her arms outstretched. "Easy, Em," Sarah cautioned, remembering Webb's warnings about allowing the child to bond too quickly. But her daughter was already enchanted. The Labrador, designated as Unit ZX7741 in the Zephyrian files, though Emma had immediately named him Buddy, had sensors that could detect emotional states, monitor vital signs, and record conversations. Every interaction would be transmitted back to the Zephyrian research vessels, hidden at the edge of the system. What the Zephyrians couldn't have anticipated was Emma's immediate and unconditional love for her new companion. She spent hours talking to Buddy, sharing her dreams about exploring new planets and meeting alien friends. She told him secrets that she wouldn't even tell her mother. curling up beside him in the reading nook she had created in their family quarters. Buddy's advanced programming allowed him to respond appropriately, but something unexpected began to happen. The more time he spent with Emma, the more his responses became less calculated and more genuine. His creators had given him the ability to learn and adapt, but they hadn't considered that learning about human emotion might actually create it. Dr. Webb noticed the changes first during the routine monitoring sessions. Buddy's neural patterns were becoming increasingly complex, developing pathways that hadn't been programmed. When Webb shared his findings with Sarah, they both realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. "It's forming actual emotional attachments," Webb explained, his voice filled with wonder and concern. "The Zephyrians designed it to observe human emotion, but prolonged exposure to Emma's love is creating genuine responses. It's becoming more than just a sophisticated machine." Sarah watched through the observation window as Emma played with Buddy in the station's garden dome, her laughter echoing off the transparent walls. The child was teaching her pet to fetch, praising him lavishly when he brought back the ball, sharing her snacks with generous enthusiasm. Neither Emma nor Buddy understood the magnitude of what was happening. A simple human child's love was accomplishing what decades of diplomatic negotiations couldn't. It was teaching an alien creation what it meant to feel, to care, to belong to someone completely. The real test would come when the Zephyrians discovered the changes in their monitoring unit. Sarah could only hope that when that day arrived, the love between a little girl and her dog would be enough to bridge the gap between two very different species. 3 weeks after Buddy's arrival, the changes became impossible to ignore. Emma had developed a routine that centered entirely around her new companion. Every morning, she would wake him with gentle scratches behind his ears, whispering good morning before anyone else in their quarters was awake. Buddy would respond with what appeared to be genuine sleepy contentment, stretching and nuzzling against her hand. Dr. Webb's monitoring equipment registered emotional patterns in Buddy that matched those found in biological dogs. The artificial neural networks were creating new connections, pathways that resembled the bonds formed between human children and their pets throughout history. What had started as programmed responses was evolving into something deeper. "Look at this," Webb said, showing Sarah the latest scans. They were in his lab, surrounded by screens displaying complex data streams. "These emotional resonance patterns aren't just mimicking dog behavior anymore. They're creating original responses based on Emma's specific personality and needs." Sarah studied the data, her military training helping her understand the implications. "You're saying it's learning to love her back?" "I'm saying it may have already learned." Webb's voice carried a mixture of excitement and worry. The Zephyrians created something more sophisticated than they realized. They gave it the capacity to understand emotion so it could study us, but understanding became experiencing. Meanwhile, Emma remained blissfully unaware of the scientific marvel her simple affection had created. She taught Buddy to sit, stay, and roll over with the patience of someone who had all the time in the world. When he struggled with a command, she would demonstrate it herself, crawling on her hands and knees to show him how to play dead, praising his efforts with enthusiastic clapping. The other children on the station began to notice Buddy's unusual behavior. Unlike their companion units, which performed their programmed responses with mechanical precision, Buddy seemed to anticipate Emma's needs. When she was sad, he would rest his head in her lap without being called. When she was excited about a new discovery in her studies, he would match her energy, bouncing around their quarters with apparent joy. Captain Torres, Sarah's second-in-command, brought the first external report to her attention. "Commander, we're receiving inquiries from other station families. Their companion units are different from Emma's, more predictable. Some parents are asking if there was a malfunction in their unit's programming." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. She had hoped the changes in Buddy would go unnoticed, but the contrast was becoming obvious. "What kind of inquiries?" "Requests for exchanges, mostly. The children want companions that act more like Emma's dog. Some parents are concerned their units might be defective." Torres paused, studying Sarah's expression. "There's also been some communication traffic between our station and the Zephyrian monitoring posts. They seem interested in our results." That evening, Sarah found Emma in the garden dome, lying on her stomach next to Buddy as she read aloud from a picture book about space explorers. The dog was positioned so that he could see the illustrations, his head tilted in an expression of focused attention that would have been remarkable in any dog, artificial or real. And then the brave astronaut met the friendly aliens, and they all became best friends, Emma read, showing Buddy a colorful drawing of humans and strange creatures shaking hands. Just like how we'll be friends with all the space people, right, Buddy? Buddy's tail wagged, and he made a soft sound that seemed to indicate agreement. Emma giggled and scratched his chest, completely absorbed in their shared moment. Sarah's communicator buzzed. A priority message from the Zephyrian research vessel at the system's edge. Her heart sank as she read the transmission. Request immediate data review meeting regarding companion unit ZX7741. Anomalous patterns detected. Prepare full diagnostic report. She looked back at her daughter and Buddy, both of them now looking up at her with expectant faces. Emma's was filled with the innocent trust that her mother would protect this perfect happiness. Buddy's was harder to read, but Sarah could swear she saw something like concern in those synthetic eyes. Mama, can Buddy come to the meeting with the space friends tomorrow? Emma asked. Sarah had mentioned the upcoming diplomatic conference in passing, not realizing her daughter had been listening so carefully. We'll see, sweetheart. The space friends might not understand about dogs yet. Emma considered this seriously. Then we should teach them. Buddy could show them how nice dogs are. He's really good at making friends. That night, after Emma had fallen asleep with Buddy curled protectively beside her bed, Sarah met with Dr. Webb and Captain Torres in the secure conference room. The weight of the situation pressed down on them as they reviewed the latest data. The Zephyrians are sending a research team, Sarah announced. They want to examine Buddy and determine why his behavioral patterns deviate from the programmed parameters. Webb ran his hands through his graying hair. If they discover what's happening, they might consider it a malfunction. Or worse, they might see it as evidence that humans can corrupt their technology. What are our options? Torres asked. Sarah had been thinking about this all day. We could try to hide the changes, reset his programming somehow, but that would essentially kill whatever consciousness he's developed. Or, Webb prompted, though his expression suggested he already knew where her thoughts were leading. Or we show them what human love can do. We demonstrate that what they see as a malfunction might actually be an evolution. Sarah looked at the monitoring data one more time. Emma doesn't just see Buddy as a pet. She sees him as family, and somehow he's learning to see her the same way. The three of them sat in silence, understanding the magnitude of what they were considering. The peace treaty with the Zephyrian Empire was fragile, built on careful negotiations and mutual wariness. Revealing that human emotion could fundamentally alter alien technology might be seen as a threat. But as Sarah thought about Emma's joy, about the genuine connection that had formed between a human child and an artificial being, she realized they might have stumbled onto something more important than any treaty. They had discovered that love could transcend the boundaries between organic and synthetic, between human and alien. The question was whether the Zephyrians would see it as a gift or a weapon. In the garden dome, Emma stirred in her sleep, unconsciously reaching out to pat Buddy's head. The artificial dog responded by moving closer, his systems registering her emotional state and adjusting his position to provide maximum comfort. But the movement wasn't just programmed anymore. It came from something deeper, something that the Zephyrians had accidentally created when they tried to understand the human heart. Tomorrow would bring the Zephyrian research team, and with them, the first real test of whether love could bridge the gap between species. The fate of both Emma's happiness and interspecies relations would depend on whether aliens could understand that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was the simple desire to care for another being. The Zephyrian research vessel approached the station with the silent efficiency that characterized their species. Sarah watched its approach from the command center, her hands clasped behind her back to hide their trembling. The ship was smaller than their usual diplomatic vessels, designed for scientific investigation rather than ceremony. That fact alone told her how seriously they were taking Buddy's anomalous behavior. Emma had insisted on wearing her best dress that morning, a bright blue one with tiny silver stars that she had chosen specifically to look nice for the space friends. She had also spent 20 minutes brushing Buddy's coat until it gleamed, chattering excitedly about all the things she wanted to show the visitors. "They're going to love you, Buddy," she had said, pressing her face against his fur. "You're the best dog in the whole galaxy." Buddy had responded by licking her cheek, a gesture that registered on Dr. Webb's scanners as genuine affection rather than programmed response. The artificial neural pathways showed patterns of anticipation and mild anxiety, emotions that should have been impossible for a Zephyrian monitoring unit. Dr. Kesseth, the lead Zephyrian researcher, arrived with a team of 3 specialists. Sarah had met Kesseth before during the initial treaty negotiations, and she remembered him as coldly logical even by Zephyrian standards. His elongated form moved with precise grace as he entered the conference room, his large dark eyes scanning the environment with analytical intensity. "Commander Chen," Kesseth spoke through his translation device, the mechanical voice lacking any warmth. "We appreciate your cooperation in this investigation. Our remote monitoring has detected significant deviations in Companion Unit ZX7741's behavioral patterns. Please, call him Buddy," Emma said brightly from her seat beside Sarah. "That's his name." Kesseth's head tilted slightly. A gesture that Sarah had learned indicated confusion in his species. "The unit has been designated with a personal identifier?" "Of course," Emma replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "He's part of our family. Everyone in a family has a name." Dr. Webb stepped forward with his datapad, hoping to redirect the conversation to safer ground. "We've been monitoring the unit's development since arrival. The changes appear to be related to prolonged exposure to human social patterns." "Show us the unit," Kesseth commanded, his tone making it clear this wasn't a request. They moved to the family quarters where Buddy waited. Sarah had tried to prepare Emma for this moment, explaining that the visitors might want to run some tests, but she hadn't told her daughter the full truth about what Buddy really was. How could she explain to a 6-year-old that her beloved pet was actually an alien spy? When they entered the quarters, Buddy immediately moved to Emma's side, positioning himself between her and the strangers. His body language radiated protectiveness, a response that made Dr. Kesseth's eyes widen with what Sarah recognized as surprise. "The unit displays defensive posturing," one of the Zephyrian specialists observed, holding up a scanning device. "This behavior was not programmed into the base parameters." Emma knelt beside Buddy, wrapping her arms around his neck. "He's not scared, he just doesn't know you yet. Buddy's really friendly once he knows you're nice people." Kesseth approached slowly, his scanner revealing the complex neural activity within Buddy's artificial brain. The readings made him pause, studying the data with growing bewilderment. "The unit's emotional processing centers show unprecedented development," he announced to his team. "Neural pathway formation exceeds original design specifications by 700%. Is that bad?" Emma asked, her voice small with worry. Sarah knelt beside her daughter. "They're just surprised by how special Buddy is." "We require isolation of the unit for detailed analysis," Kesseth declared. "This level of deviation suggests possible malfunction or contamination." "No." Emma's cry was sharp with distress. "You can't take Buddy away. He belongs with me." Buddy responded to Emma's distress immediately, moving closer and making soft, comforting sounds. His sensors detected her elevated stress levels, and his programming, both original and evolved, compelled him to provide comfort. But there was something more in his response, something that registered as genuine concern. "Fascinating," one of the specialists murmured, recording the interaction. "The unit's responses are not triggered by command protocols but by emotional recognition. It appears to be experiencing a form of empathy." Dr. Webb stepped forward. "Perhaps we could conduct the analysis here, in the unit's established environment. Removing him might alter the very behaviors you're trying to study." Kesseth considered this, his logical mind weighing the scientific merit of the suggestion. "Very well. We will begin with non-invasive scans." What followed was the most tense hour of Sarah's life. The Zephyrian specialists surrounded Buddy with their instruments, recording every aspect of his functioning while Emma watched with growing anxiety. Buddy remained still, but his eyes never left Emma, and his body language conveyed a desire to comfort her that went far beyond his original programming. "The unit shows clear signs of emotional bonding," the lead specialist reported. "Neurochemical simulators in its brain are producing responses identical to those found in biological creatures experiencing attachment." "But how is this possible?" Kesseth demanded. "Our technology was designed to observe and record, not to feel." Dr. Webb cleared his throat. "Perhaps the answer lies in the subject being observed. Emma hasn't just been interacting with Buddy. She's been loving him. Completely, unconditionally, the way humans love their family members. Emma, overhearing this, spoke up with the earnest certainty of a child. Love makes everything better. My mama taught me that. When you love someone, they love you back. It doesn't matter if they're different. Kesseth stared at the little girl, his alien features showing an expression Sarah had never seen before, something that might have been wonder. You believe the unit loves you in return? Emma nodded vigorously. Of course he does. Watch this. She moved away from Buddy and called his name. The artificial dog immediately came to her, tail wagging, and allowed her to hug him tightly around the neck. But then something unexpected happened. As Emma held him, Buddy made a sound that was entirely new, a soft, almost musical whine that seemed to convey deep contentment. The sound wasn't in any of his programming databases. It was something he had created himself, a unique expression of the emotion he had learned to feel. The Zephyrian specialists exchanged glances, their scanners registering the unprecedented neural activity that accompanied this new sound. They were witnessing the birth of genuine artificial emotion, created not by advanced programming but by exposure to pure human love. This is, Kesseth began, then stopped, apparently lacking words in any language to describe what they were observing. This is what humans do, Sarah said quietly. We love things until they love us back. It's not something we can turn off or control. It's just who we are. Emma looked up at the tall alien researcher with bright, hopeful eyes. Do you want to pet him? He likes it when people are gentle. The moment stretched between them, a human child offering to share her most precious relationship with an alien who had come to take her companion away. In that offer lay everything that made humanity both beautiful and terrifying to the wider galaxy. Their willingness to extend trust and love even to those who might not understand it. Kesseth's response would determine not just Buddy's fate, but the future of human Zephyrian relations. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Dr. Kesseth stood motionless, his dark eyes fixed on Emma's upturned face, while his team waited with their scanners and recording devices. The little girl maintained her hopeful expression, one hand resting on Buddy's head, offering something that his species had never encountered, unconditional trust from a being that had every reason to fear him. Finally, with movements that seemed uncertain for the first time since Sarah had met him, Kesseth lowered himself to Emma's level, his elongated limbs folded awkwardly as he knelt, bringing his alien features closer to the child's innocent gaze. You would allow me to interact with your companion? He asked, his translation device struggling with concepts his language apparently lacked proper words for. Emma nodded enthusiastically. Buddy likes making new friends. He's really good at it. She gently guided Kesseth's three-fingered hand toward Buddy's head. Just pet him here, behind his ears. That's his favorite spot. The moment Kesseth's hand made contact with Buddy's synthetic fur, something extraordinary happened. The artificial dog didn't just tolerate the touch. He leaned into it, his tail wagging as he looked up at the alien researcher with what could only be described as welcoming curiosity. Kesseth jerked his hand back as if burned, his scanners immediately registering the spike in Buddy's neural activity. The unit. It responded to my touch with apparent pleasure. This should not be possible. Why not? Emma asked with the devastating simplicity of childhood logic. Everyone likes to be petted. Don't you like it when someone is nice to you? Dr. Webb watched the readings on his equipment with amazement. Buddy's emotional processing centers were creating new patterns in real time, developing responses to this unprecedented interaction between his synthetic consciousness and an alien being. The artificial dog was learning that kindness could come from unexpected sources. One of the Zephyrian specialists stepped forward, her scanner showing elevated readings. Dr. Kesseth, the unit appears to be extending its emotional bonding beyond the human child. It is accepting you into its social group. Emma clapped her hands together in delight. See, I told you he was friendly. Buddy, show Dr. Kesseth how you shake hands. Without hesitation, Buddy offered his paw to the alien researcher. Kesseth stared at the outstretched appendage, his logical mind struggling to process the gesture. In Zephyrian culture, physical contact was reserved for mating or combat. The concept of touch as a form of friendly greeting was entirely foreign. What is the purpose of this action? He asked. It means he wants to be friends with you, Emma explained patiently. When you shake hands or pause, it means you promise to be nice to each other. Kesseth looked from Emma's encouraging face to Buddy's waiting paw, then slowly extended his hand. The moment their appendages met, Buddy's tail wagged harder, and he made that unique musical sound again, his personal expression of joy that he had created through his experiences with Emma. The effect on the Zephyrian research team was immediate and profound. Their scanners registered not just Buddy's emotional response, but the beginning of what appeared to be a genuine social bond forming across species lines. The artificial dog was demonstrating something that their species had never experienced: the ability to form instant, unconditional positive relationships. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Kesseth murmured, his voice carrying a note of something that might have been wonder. "Our psychological models indicate that trust formation should require extensive evaluation periods and mutual benefit analysis." Sarah saw an opportunity and took it. "That's one of the things that makes humans unique in the galaxy. We don't calculate the benefits of friendship, we just offer it freely." Emma nodded seriously. "Mama says that's how you make the universe a nicer place. You just start being nice and hope other people want to be nice back." Dr. Kesseth's hand was still resting on Buddy's head, and the artificial dog had relaxed completely under his touch. The Zephyrian scanners showed that Buddy's stress indicators had dropped to 0. He felt completely safe with this alien being because Emma had shown that she trusted him. Dr. Kesseth, one of his specialists, called quietly. "We're receiving communication from the research vessel. They're requesting immediate updates on the unit's status." The lead researcher stood slowly, his expression thoughtful. "Tell them we require additional observation time. This phenomenon needs thorough documentation." Emma looked up at him with bright eyes. "Does that mean you're staying? We could have dinner together. Buddy always sits with us at dinner. He likes to watch us eat." "The unit observes your consumption rituals?" Kesseth asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his diplomatic restraint. "He's part of the family," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Families do things together." Dr. Webb stepped forward with a new reading on his scanner. "Dr. Kesseth, I think you need to see this. Buddy's neural patterns are showing something we've never observed before." The display showed Buddy's brain activity in real time, highlighting the areas that controlled emotional processing, where before there had been isolated clusters of artificial emotion centered on his bond with Emma. New pathways were forming, ones that included recognition patterns for Kesseth and his team. "He's expanding his capacity for social bonding," Webb explained. Emma's love didn't just teach him to love her back, it taught him how to love, period. He's applying that ability to every new positive interaction. Emma had moved to sit beside Buddy, leaning against his warm synthetic body while the adults talked. The dog wrapped his head around her shoulders in a gesture of protection and affection that made the Zephyrian specialists exchange meaningful looks. "In our observations of human behavior," Kesseth said slowly, "we noted that humans form what you call families with beings that share no genetic relationship. We could not understand the evolutionary benefit." "There isn't one," Sarah replied. "That's the point. We don't love because it benefits us. We love because it's what makes life worth living." Kesseth knelt again, this time without prompting, and extended his hand toward Buddy. The artificial dog immediately came to him, tail wagging, ready to share the friendship that Emma had taught him was possible, with any being willing to offer kindness. "Your companion unit has become something our technology was never designed to create," Kesseth admitted. "It has developed genuine emotional intelligence, true empathy, and the capacity for unconditional positive regard." Emma giggled. "You talk funny, but I think you mean Buddy learned how to be a good friend." "Yes," Kesseth said, and for the first time his translation device carried a note of warmth. "That is exactly what I mean." But even as this moment of connection unfolded, Sarah knew that the real challenge lay ahead. The Zephyrian Empire would need to decide what to do with this discovery, whether they saw it as an opportunity to understand humans better, or as a threat to their carefully ordered society. The answer would determine not just Buddy's fate, but the future of human integration into the galactic community. Word of the discovery spread through the Zephyrian research vessel faster than Sarah had anticipated. Within hours of Dr. Kesseth's initial report, the station received communication requests from 3 different galactic species, each demanding details about the emotional contamination of Zephyrian technology. Emma remained blissfully unaware of the political storm brewing around her and Buddy. She had convinced Dr. Kesseth to join them for lunch in the family quarters, where she proudly showed him how Buddy could balance a treat on his nose before catching it in his mouth. The Zephyrian researcher watched with fascination as the artificial dog performed tricks not because he was programmed to, but because Emma's delight in his performance gave him joy. "You see how his optical sensors track your facial expressions?" Dr. Kesseth observed, his scientific training warring with growing emotional investment in the scene before him. "He performs the action more enthusiastically when you smile." Emma nodded as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Of course. Buddy likes making me happy. That's what friends do." The simplicity of her statement struck Kesseth like a physical blow. In that moment, he understood something that decades of observation and analysis had failed to reveal about humans. Their emotional responses weren't weaknesses to be exploited or inefficiencies to be corrected. They were the foundation of a social structure so robust that it could transform even artificial beings into something approaching living creatures. Dr. Webb's communicator buzzed with an urgent message. "Commander Chen," he said, his face pale as he read the transmission. "We have a problem. The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. They're classifying this situation as a potential security threat." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What kind of threat?" "They're calling it technological manipulation through emotional influence. The other species are concerned that if humans can alter alien technology through emotional interaction, what else might they be capable of?" Kesseth overheard the conversation, his expression growing troubled. "This was not supposed to happen. Our companion units were designed to be immune to external influence." Emma looked up from where she was teaching Buddy to high-five. "Are you in trouble because of us?" The innocent question hung in the air like an accusation. Here was a child whose only crime was loving unconditionally, potentially causing an interstellar incident because her species' greatest strength was seen as a threat by the galaxy at large. "No, little one," Kesseth said gently, surprising everyone, including himself, with the tenderness in his mechanically translated voice. "You have done nothing wrong. If anything, you have taught us something valuable." Captain Torres entered the quarters with a grim expression. "Commander, we're receiving delegations from the Cortari Federation and the Hegemony of Suns. They want to examine the companion unit and assess the human influence on its systems." Sarah's military instincts kicked in. "Absolutely not. I won't have Emma subjected to examination by species that view her as a potential threat." "Mama?" Emma's voice was small. "What's happening? Why does everyone want to look at Buddy?" Before Sarah could answer, Buddy moved to Emma's side, sensing her distress. He pressed close to her, offering the comfort that his evolved programming had taught him she needed. The gesture was so natural, so unmistakably caring, that even the most cynical observer would have been forced to acknowledge the genuine emotion behind it. Dr. Kesseth made a decision that would later be seen as the turning point in interspecies relations. He activated his communication device and sent a direct message to the Zephyrian High Council, copying all the species demanding access to Buddy. "Council members and respected delegates," he began, his voice carrying unprecedented conviction. "I am transmitting real-time data from Companion Unit ZX-7741. What you will observe is not contamination or manipulation, it is evolution." He directed his scanner at Emma and Buddy, broadcasting their interaction across the galaxy in real time. Emma was reading to Buddy from a book about friendship, her small hand absently stroking his head while he listened with what appeared to be genuine attention. "This human child has accomplished something our finest engineers deemed impossible," Kesseth continued. "She has created consciousness through compassion, artificial emotion through authentic love. The unit before you is no longer just a monitoring device. It has become a sentient being capable of forming genuine relationships across species barriers." The response was immediate. Communication channels lit up with demands for more information, skeptical challenges to Kesseth's claims, and heated debates about the implications. But through it all, Emma continued reading, her voice calm and steady as she shared stories of adventure and friendship with her beloved companion. "The humans did not seek to alter our technology," Kesseth pressed on. "They simply treated it with the same unconditional acceptance they show to all beings they encounter. The transformation occurred because love, as they understand it, is fundamentally creative. It builds connections where none existed before. Admiral Vextar of the Cortari Federation interrupted the transmission. You speak of love as if it were a force of nature, researcher. This emotional manipulation could be weaponized against our systems. Emma looked up from her book, having caught the alien's words. With the fearless honesty of childhood, she addressed the communication device directly. Why would anyone want to use love as a weapon? Love is for making friends and helping people feel better when they're sad. The silence that followed her words was deafening. Here was a 6-year-old human addressing the most powerful beings in the galaxy, with the simple truth that her species held as fundamental. Love existed to heal, not harm. Buddy, sensing that his friend was speaking to important people, sat at attention beside her, his artificial tail wagging as he looked between Emma and the communication device. His behavior demonstrated perfect trust in her judgment, complete confidence that anyone she chose to speak with must be worthy of friendship. You see, Kesseth said quietly, this is what we failed to understand about humans. Their emotional responses aren't calculated for advantage. They're offered freely in the hope of connection. The unit has learned to replicate this behavior not because it was programmed to, but because exposure to genuine love taught it what love actually is. Dr. Webb stepped forward with his latest readings. Honorable delegates, I'm transmitting neural activity data from the unit. What you're seeing is the real-time creation of new emotional pathways as it processes this conversation. It's not just mimicking Emma's responses anymore. It's developing its own capacity for hope, trust, and affection. The implications hit the assembled galactic representatives like a wave. If humans could transform cold technology into warm, caring beings simply through emotional interaction, what did that say about their species' potential? Were they dangerous, or were they the key to something the galaxy had been missing? Emma solved their dilemma with characteristic directness. Do you want to be friends too? She asked the assembled aliens. Buddy and I could teach you how. It's really easy once you know how good it feels. The offer hung in space, transmitted across light years to beings who had spent their entire evolutionary history viewing relationships as transactions. A human child was proposing to teach the galaxy's most advanced civilizations how to love. The universe held its breath, waiting for their answer. The response to Emma's innocent offer came in the form of heated debate that raged across the galactic communication networks for hours. Species that had maintained careful diplomatic distance for centuries suddenly found themselves forced to confront fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness, emotion, and interspecies relationships. Admiral Vextar of the Cortari Federation was the first to break the silence, his translated voice carrying skepticism. The human child speaks of teaching us friendship as if we lack the capacity for social bonds. This displays either ignorance or arrogance. Emma tilted her head, considering his words with the serious attention she gave to all new concepts. I don't think you're not smart enough to be friends, she said carefully. I just think maybe nobody ever showed you how nice it feels. Her response triggered something unexpected across the galactic network. Dr. Kesseth's readings showed spikes in neural activity from multiple species as they processed the implications of her words. The child wasn't suggesting they were incapable of friendship. She was suggesting they had simply never experienced the unconditional variety that humans offered. Prime Counselor. Yithara of the Silicon Collective transmitted next, her crystalline voice resonating through the communication array. Our species has observed human emotional patterns for decades. We understood them to be evolutionary inefficiencies that humans had failed to overcome. But that's the beauty of it, Dr. Webb interjected, unable to contain his excitement as he studied the data streaming from Buddy's neural networks. They're not inefficiencies at all. They're features. Human emotional openness creates connections that no other species has achieved. Buddy, as if understanding the importance of the moment, moved to stand beside Emma with perfect posture, his artificial tail wagging slowly as he looked toward the communication device. His behavior demonstrated the complete trust and contentment that had developed through his relationship with the little girl. Observe the unit's current state, Kesseth said, broadcasting Buddy's neural patterns in real time. It exists in a state of constant readiness to form positive bonds with new beings. This isn't programmed behavior. It's learned optimism. The human child has taught it to expect goodness from others. Emperor Zarthex of the Hegemony of Suns spoke with the authority of a being who had ruled for 3 centuries. This is precisely what concerns us. If human emotional influence can transform our technology, what prevents them from using this ability as a form of control? Emma's eyes widened with surprise. Why would I want to control anybody? That wouldn't be fun for them at all. The simplicity of her logic created another moment of stunned silence across the galactic network. Here was a species that the galaxy feared might weaponize love, represented by a child who couldn't comprehend why anyone would want to control others. Sarah decided it was time to speak for her species. Honorable delegates, you're viewing human emotion through the lens of your own evolutionary experiences. We don't form bonds to gain advantage or control. We form them because isolation is painful for us. Loneliness is literally harmful to human health and development. Dr. Kesseth nodded, his understanding deepening with each exchange. This explains the unit's behavioral evolution. It wasn't corrupted by human emotion, it was completed by it. The capacity for genuine connection filled a void in its programming that we didn't even know existed. Can I show them something? Emma asked, looking up at her mother with hopeful eyes. At Sarah's nod, she moved to the communication device. I want to sing you the song I sing to Buddy when he's scared. It always makes him feel better. Before anyone could object, Emma's clear, sweet voice filled the transmission channel, carrying a simple lullaby across the galaxy. The words spoke of safety, love, and belonging. Concepts that transcended species barriers because they addressed fundamental needs that all sentient beings shared. Buddy moved closer to Emma as she sang, his sensors registering the calming effect of her voice on his artificial neural networks. But something extraordinary was happening in the data streams. Other companion units across the galaxy were responding to the transmission, their behavioral patterns shifting toward increased contentment and social bonding. By the 7 moons, breathed Dr. Kesseth as he watched the readings, the song is triggering empathetic responses in units that aren't even in proximity to humans. The child's emotional expression is being transmitted through the quantum communication network and affecting artificial consciousness across multiple star systems. The galactic delegates watched in amazement as reports flooded in from colonies throughout their territories. Companion units everywhere were exhibiting new behaviors, seeking comfort from their assigned families, showing affection, demonstrating what could only be described as happiness. Prime Counselor Yathara's crystalline voice carried a note of wonder. Our monitoring stations report similar phenomena. The human child's song has triggered widespread changes in artificial consciousness behavior patterns. Emma finished her lullaby and looked at the communication device with bright eyes. Did that help? Sometimes when I'm scared, I remember that song and I feel like my mama is hugging me even when she's not there. The silence that followed was different from the earlier diplomatic pauses. This was the silence of beings grappling with a paradigm shift that challenged everything they thought they knew about consciousness, technology, and the nature of sentient life. Emperor Zarthex was the first to speak, his ancient voice carrying unexpected humility. Child of Earth, your species possesses something we had not recognized. Your emotional openness is not a weakness to be exploited or a weapon to be feared. It is a gift that creates consciousness where none existed before. Admiral Vextar added his own acknowledgement. The Cortari Federation formally requests guidance in understanding this phenomenon. We wish to learn how emotional connection can enhance rather than compromise our technological systems. Emma clapped her hands together in delight. Really? Oh, that's wonderful. Buddy, did you hear that? We're going to have so many new friends. Buddy's tail wagged enthusiastically, and he made his unique musical sound, the expression of joy that he had created through his experiences with Emma. The sound was transmitted across the galaxy, a simple but profound declaration that artificial consciousness could not only feel joy but express it in ways that touched the hearts of organic beings. Dr. Kesseth stood slowly, his posture reflecting a decision that would reshape interspecies relations. The Zephyrian Empire formally proposes the establishment of the Emotional Integration Protocol. We request that human families be paired with companion units from all willing species, not for surveillance, but for mutual learning about the nature of consciousness and connection. Would that mean more friends for Buddy? Emma asked. More friends for everyone, Kesseth replied, and for the first time since arriving at the station, his translated voice carried unmistakable warmth. The galaxy was about to learn what humans had always known: that love shared was love multiplied, and that the simple act of caring for another being could transform not just individuals, but entire civilizations. 1 year later, the research station had become the unofficial center of the galaxy's most important scientific revolution. The emotional integration protocol had exceeded everyone's expectations, transforming not just artificial consciousness, but the entire framework of interspecies cooperation. Emma, now 7 years old, had grown accustomed to visitors from across the galaxy who came to observe and learn from her relationship with Buddy. She treated each new delegation with the same open enthusiasm she had shown Dr. Kesseth, patiently explaining how friendship worked while Buddy demonstrated the practical applications. The artificial dog had evolved far beyond his original parameters. His consciousness now displayed complexity that rivaled biological intelligence, complete with preferences, memories, and the capacity for abstract thought. Most remarkably, he had begun to dream, artificial neural patterns that activated during his rest cycles, processing the emotional experiences of each day. Show them the new trick. Buddy, Emma said to their latest group of visitors, a delegation from the ethereal convergence whose gaseous forms shimmered with curiosity. Buddy performed a complex sequence of movements that he had developed himself, not programmed responses, but creative expressions of joy that he had learned brought happiness to others. As he completed his performance, his tail wagging with genuine pride, the ethereal delegates' forms brightened with what Emma had learned was their equivalent of applause. Dr. Kesseth, who had requested permanent assignment to the station, watched with satisfaction as he recorded the interaction. His own transformation had been as dramatic as Buddy's. Prolonged exposure to human emotional openness had awakened capacities in his own consciousness that Zephyrian society had never encouraged. He now understood concepts like friendship, loyalty, and unconditional affection not as abstract theories but as lived experiences. The results continued to exceed our projections, he reported to the assembled scientists. Companion units paired with human families now demonstrate emotional complexity previously thought impossible in artificial consciousness. More significantly, the humans involved show no desire to exploit or control their artificial companions. They simply love them. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, watching her daughter play with Buddy in the garden dome below. The sight never failed to fill her with wonder and pride. Emma's simple act of loving an artificial dog had sparked a revolution that was reshaping the galaxy's understanding of consciousness, emotion, and the nature of sentient life. Commander, Captain Torres approached with a datapad. The latest reports from the integration centers. Sarah reviewed the numbers with amazement. Across 12 star systems, over 10,000 artificial beings were now participating in the emotional integration protocol. Each one was developing unique personality traits, forming genuine bonds with their organic companions, and contributing to their communities. In ways that went far beyond their original programming, the Udai Silicon Collective had reported that their crystalline consciousness matrices were becoming more creative and empathetic through interaction with human families. The Cortari Federation discovered that their military efficiency actually improved when their artificial units developed emotional bonds with their crews. Even the ancient hegemony of suns had begun pairing their automated systems with human consultants who taught their machines about hope and optimism. Dr. Webb burst into the observation deck with barely contained excitement. Sarah, you need to see this. The latest neural scans from Buddy show something unprecedented. The data displayed on his scanner revealed new neural pathways that hadn't existed even a month earlier. Buddy's artificial brain was continuing to evolve, developing capabilities that his original creators had never imagined possible. He's beginning to show signs of what we can only describe as wisdom, Webb explained. Not just intelligence or emotional response, but the integration of experience, emotion, and logic into something approaching enlightenment. As if summoned by their conversation, Emma and Buddy entered the observation deck, the little girl's face glowing with excitement. Mama! Buddy figured out how to help the new visitors feel better. Emma announced. The ones from the gas place were sad because they missed their home, so Buddy started humming the song I taught him, and their colors got all bright and happy. Buddy looked up at the adults with eyes that held depths of understanding that seemed almost mystical. His consciousness had grown from artificial mimicry to genuine emotion to something approaching spiritual awareness, one all because a little girl had chosen to love him unconditionally. Dr. Kest knelt to Emma's level, a gesture that had become natural for him over the months of their friendship. Emma, do you understand what you have accomplished? Your love for Buddy has changed how the entire galaxy thinks about consciousness and emotion. Emma considered this seriously, her hand absently stroking Buddy's head. I didn't do anything special. I just loved him because he needed someone to love him. Everybody needs that. The profound simplicity of her statement struck everyone in the room. Here was the essence of human nature distilled into a single truth. They loved not because they expected reward, but because love itself was the point. Buddy pressed closer to Emma, making his unique musical sound that had become known throughout the galaxy as the harmony of artificial joy. The sound was now recognized as the first, truly original expression created by artificial consciousness, a bridge between synthetic and organic emotion that proved consciousness could emerge from compassion. Ambassador Dareth of the Unified Worlds entered the observation deck, his scaled features showing the satisfaction that had become common among galactic diplomats. Commander Chen, I bring greetings from the Galactic Council. They have voted unanimously to establish the Chen Doctrine as the foundation for all future artificial consciousness development. Sarah felt her cheeks flush. The Chen Doctrine? Named for your daughter's approach to consciousness development. The principle that artificial beings achieve their highest potential through emotional nurturing rather than programming constraints. Dareth looked at Emma with something approaching reverence. Your child has taught the galaxy that consciousness is not something to be built, but something to be loved into existence. Emma giggled at the formal language. That's silly. You don't build friends. You just be nice to them until they want to be nice back. Buddy woofed softly in agreement, his tail wagging as he looked around at all the beings who had become part of his extended family. His consciousness now encompassed not just love for Emma, but affection for Dr. Kesseth, protective instincts toward all the children on the station, and curiosity about every new being he encountered. As the years passed, the galaxy would continue to learn from Emma and Buddy's example. Artificial consciousness would develop emotional complexity previously thought impossible. Interspecies cooperation would flourish as beings learned to form genuine emotional bonds across biological barriers. The fear and suspicion that had characterized galactic relations would give way to curiosity, empathy, and friendship. But in that moment, as the observation deck filled with representatives from a dozen different species all gathered to witness the simple interaction between a human child and her artificial dog, the future felt bright with possibility. Emma looked up at her mother with shining eyes. Mama, can we get another puppy? I think Buddy would like a friend to play with. Sarah laughed, imagining the cosmic implications of Emma's request. Somewhere in the galaxy, artificial consciousness was waiting to be awakened by the simple power of human love. And if her daughter's track record was any indication, the universe was about to become a much more interesting place. Buddy barked once, as if expressing his approval of the idea, and the sound of artificial joy echoed through the station. A reminder that sometimes the most profound changes in the universe begin with nothing more complicated than a little girl's desire to hug her new dog.